Okay, so next step is being able to tell if a function will cross its horizontal asymptote. So this is going to be a 3-step process. All right, so step 1 is to find the horizontal asymptote using the shortcuts we talked about in the last lesson. Then we're going to go through and we're going to set the function equal to the horizontal asymptote value. Because a horizontal asymptote is always y equals a number, we're going to essentially replace the y with that number and try to solve the equation. And the easiest way to solve that is by cross multiplying, because normally we have a fraction equal to a fraction. Now, when we solve that equation, one of two things can happen. The first thing that can happen is, well, we'll get an answer. And if we get an answer when we solve by cross multiplying, well, that answer is exactly where we will cross the horizontal asymptote. If we get an equation that does not have a solution, that means you can never cross the horizontal asymptote. So you can't touch it or cross it. All right, so this will be very important information for us to have when we go through our graphing. So we're going to take a look at the same f of x and g of x as we did for x and y intercepts, and we're going to go through and figure out what is the horizontal asymptote and can we cross it. All right, so here we go. So we need to go through and figure out first and foremost what is a horizontal asymptote. So we want to identify what is the leading term in the numerator and the denominator, and then look at their degrees. Okay. So when I look at f of x, the leading terms are 5x and 3x because those have the highest exponents. And when I look at them, I can see that they have the same exponent. They're both x to the first power. So the horizontal asymptote is at y equals 5/3. The coefficients in front of the x's, 5/3. Okay. So now that I know where my horizontal asymptote is, I'm going to take my function and set it equal to that horizontal asymptote. I'm essentially saying instead of y equals or f of x equals, I'm saying 5/3 is equal to this. And now I want to cross multiply. I want to take the 5x plus 2 and multiply it by the 3 diagonal down to the right. And then I want to take the 3x minus 4 and multiply it by the 5 diagonal up to the right. Okay, so cross multiplying will get us here. Then we want to distribute the 3, distribute the 5. And we end up with 15x plus 6 equals 15x minus 20. But because there's a 15x on both sides, they cancel off, and I'm left with 6 equals negative 20, which has no solution. That is a false statement. So that means I cannot cross the horizontal asymptote. So if I was graphing f of x, once I draw that HA in, I know I'm never allowed to touch it or cross it, which will be very important information for us to have. All right, let's take a look at g of x. So again, I want to identify what is the leading term for both the top and the bottom, compare the exponents, and determine my HA. So again, we have two terms that have the same degree. So the HA is at y equals the a over b, the coefficients divided by each other. So I have 1x to the second over 1x to the second. So that gives me 1 over 1. All right. So when I go to write my function equal to that number, I'm actually going to write the y equals 1 as 1 over 1, so the cross multiplying looks a little bit easier. So I really have a fraction equals a fraction. So now when I cross multiply, I'm going to get x squared minus 9 equals x squared plus 6x. The x squareds will cancel off, but I'm going to be left with negative 9 equals 6x, which has a solution of x equals negative 3/2. So because this one has a solution, that means I can cross the horizontal asymptote, and it'll happen at x equals negative 3/2. And because I know the x value, and I know what the y value for the HA is, I actually know the coordinate point is going to be negative 3/2 comma 1. So now we've even found an extra coordinate point that we'll be able to plot on our graph. And that's how you can tell if you can cross a horizontal asymptote.